after our first screening, we did a Q&A in the audience, and people were just raising their hand and just sort of not even asking questions. They just felt very compelled to start sort of sharing their own personal testimonials and experiences.
Welcome to OCD Whisperer podcast. Today with me, I have a special guest, Dillon Tucker, who's a filmmaker and creative force behind Pure O. It's a powerful and intimate film that explores the often misunderstood world of purely obsessional OCD. So it's not just a movie, it's a raw, honest portrayal of intrusive thoughts, shame, and the silent struggles that so many face. Welcome to the show, Dillon.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. So, I did get a sneak peek, and I did kind of read more about you and this whole process, and I
Mm.
absolutely think that just OCD in general continues to be, misunderstood. But I wanted to ask you more about, like, when you were making the film, was there a point while you were making it that you realized that this was going to be a lot more than just a movie, that it was really going to be something that would be therapeutic or healing, whether for you or even for somebody on set?
Yeah, sure. I mean, when I started out to make the film, I wrote it kind of as an exercise. I wrote it during the pandemic, and I decided that I wanted to kind of tell my story, and I got it on the page. And even as I was writing it, I didn't know if people would, outside of people who have OCD, would really understand it or get it. Um, and to take it back further, I mean, I remember when I was in the group in my I did group therapy, and when I was really kind of having my onset in my early 30s, I was late onset, and as I was sort of discovering this whole world, a lot of us would be in groups, and people would say things like, "Oh, somebody needs to make a movie about this," and then we'd sort of laugh it off and say like, "Yeah, but nobody would get it," because especially in the groups, it's obviously OCD is incredibly debilitating, but there's a lot of levity in the groups as well, and a lot of people sharing their stories, and a lot of us are able to laugh at each other and laugh at ourselves because at the same time, we're able to see how crazy it is as we're going through it. And so there was a lot of comedy, and I wanted to try to show a film that would show all the facets of it. And people were like, I don't know if people would understand the nuance of it. And so I kind of wrote it as a writing exercise to see if I could sort of pull off that magic trick to sort of subversively like educate the audience about all of this and then sort of take them on a ride and be able to enjoy it. And so then I showed it to people, and quickly people, some creative partners of mine who don't have OCD kind of read it, and they were like, "Oh, it's all there on the page. Like, I think we get it. I think it's there." So I think that was the first maybe insight that I had of like, okay, maybe by mining my own experience that I could tap into a more universal theme here of people that have been doing this. And I think that it really came through when the film premiered at South by Southwest. After our first screening, we did a Q&A in the audience, and it was such a powerful experience that I wasn't quite expecting. And people were just raising their hand and just sort of not even asking questions. They just felt very compelled to start sort of sharing their own personal testimonials and experiences, whether it's depression or OCD or mental health. Like, it really sort of empowered people to open up unprovoked, without sort of a question, just sort of launching into their testimonials with a lot of emotion. And it was an incredibly emotionally impactful experience sitting there and viewing it. And I think when I left the theater after that first time is when I sort of was like, oh, wow, I think this really is going to maybe reach out beyond myself and really sort of impact, others. And hopefully that was at the point the whole time, was to, number one, make an entertaining movie, but also to have people within the OCD community be able to see a film that represents them on the screen in some way. And that was a huge impetus for me in making the project, because I'm a bit of a cinephile myself and a filmmaker, and I wasn't able to really look at narrative filmmaking and look through films and really pinpoint films that I thought really depicted OCD in the way that I was experiencing it. And everything was sort of like Monk or As Good as It Gets, sort of like kitschy portrayals of it, using it as like a quirky character or something. And I hadn't really seen anything attempt to tackle it. And I kind of understand why. It's kind of a Puro is this disease that happens all in your head. And it's like this invisible illness. And so how do you sort of portray that cinematically on the screen and show it? I mean, it's sort of I guess the way that I did is I just decided not to show it. I mean, there's one way of making this film where you could have sort of jumped inside somebody's head and be showing all of these things, and I decided that I wanted to really ground it in realism and ground it without doing any of that. And so,
Yeah, so
yes,
where is it now? Like I know has some time has passed. So where do
yeah.
you see the film is now, like in terms of impact, and what is it that you see for yourself in the future?
Gosh, I've had so many people from all over the world reaching out, sharing how much they've been seeing, and those are obviously that's that's the biggest thing for me with the film. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, it's out there and it's spreading more and it's getting distributed, and I don't know. I think it's out of my hands now, really, in terms of and all of that. All you can do as the artist is create the story and do your best to sort of push it into the world and give it the life it can, and continue to do things like this and this podcast, and continue to try to just like let people know about it as much as possible, and then hopefully it can, especially within the OCD community. I would love it if it could find a hold and people can find it. I definitely know that I would have loved to have found a movie like this when I was getting diagnosed and I was still finding out about this, because, and for not just for the people getting diagnosed, but I think for the loved ones trying to understand it too. I think it's a very difficult illness for friends and family to understand what people are going through. So something that's not a textbook that you need to pick up and read, that can maybe feel like homework or a chore. I wanted to sort of put a narrative together that people could watch a movie and sit together, and maybe I think the film poses a lot of questions for people too, where it can start a dialogue. And so in terms of where it is now, I've had so many people reaching out, sharing that exact experience about how not just sufferers, but family members saying like, "Hey, I watched your film, and then I was finally able to sort of talk to my brother or my son," or these sort of testimonial experiences that people have shared with me, and
Yeah, I mean,
that's
I think
definitely
you're
stuff I
absolutely on
really want to
point,
start
right?
doing.
There is so much, like you referenced Monk, right? Like 100%. There's things out there that represented in this quirky way or just like symmetry. Like for example, I have, before I knew it was OCD, like relationship based OCD. No
Yeah,
clue. I had no clue that that was a thing.
yeah,
Right. So, having more films that show you different angles of it, I agree. It definitely helps to start to have kind of language and a way to discuss it, because when you're
yeah,
in it, you don't even understand what's happening. So you don't even have words sometimes for the experience. And so,
absolutely.
yeah. So, like, if somebody, because I think about there are a lot of folks I know who also have OCD and are creatives.
Yeah,
And, if somebody's looking at creating something through that process, whether it's a film or some art or writing or something, I guess, especially considering you went through this full journey yourself, like what advice would you give them? How could they navigate kind of that emotional weight?
mm,
Because I imagine there's a lot in there that you go through, from start
sure.
to finish.
Yeah, I've talked about this a lot a little bit now that the film's come out, and I've had time to kind of process my own experience with it. And I think that one thing that was important for me was I wanted to give it a little distance from the experience that I was going through, and that sort of onset, really sort of cataclysmic thing that happens in your life as one discovers that they're having OCD, and obviously that buildup of all those years where it's sort of building up and you don't know what it is, and you're having this whole sort of I had late onset, so it sort of just attacks your whole identity of who you think you are and what's going on. And so I knew while I was going through it, I suffered a lot from relationship OCD and harm OCD, and as I got into treatment, I really understood that the content doesn't really matter, and that it's all sort of OCD is functions in the same way regardless of what the theme is, and it's going to jump around. But I wanted to give a distance from it. So as I was going through things, I sort of bullet pointed out stuff on an outline, and just as I was going through, but I knew that it wasn't something that I wanted to particularly write as I was going through it. I wanted to wait until I had a little bit of a distance, not so far away that I've totally forgot it and sort of had distanced myself, but in that sweet spot where I had sort of kind of moved past things, I could still access it. And so I waited a few years to write the script because I wanted to sort of write it with an eye looking back on it versus writing it in the middle of it. But now that I've gone through it, I actually I did this talk with OCD Game Changers, and it made me think about it. And I was realizing at that point that I think that I look at OCD now as kind of my superpower. Honestly, all that stuff that scared me about it. I mean, I can be incredibly perfectionistic and attention to detail and things like that. So, on a film like this where I was wearing so many hats, I was a producer and I directed and I had a small part acting and did the music and edited the film. It's a space where I can allow my OCD to find a home in a productive way. When I'm putting my OCD into, like you just said, creative, I think that there's a long lineage of people with OCD that are highly creative people. And so when I allow my OCD to sort of feast on all of that creative material, it's a very positive thing. It actually is a way where I get very perfectionistic and into it, but I leave it feeling very fulfilled and feel very good. Versus when my OCD is attacking my relationship with my girlfriend, or any other aspect of my life where it's detrimental. I'm able to now recognize when it's happening and sort of just allow my OCD to be there when I need it. And so in that way, I think that this experience of making the film, all of that stuff going into it, of the catharsis, or what is this going to feel like, or and for the most part, making the film, honestly, you're just so, with all the hats I was wearing, you're so immersed in it that you kind of don't even have time to think. That it wasn't until I had kind of almost finished editing the movie. I've told this story before, but before we premiered the film, we had to go get a DCP, which is just a film print that they run the movie off of in movie theaters. And I had to go to this theater in Burbank here in Los Angeles and watch the film and kind of screen it for quality control. And so I showed up not thinking anything of it, and some other people were supposed to join me for this screening, and they didn't show up, so it was just me. And the projectionist, sort of said, "Okay, well, I guess you're here. We're going to run it. So just sit in the theater." So it was this, massive 100-person seat theater. And I sat right in the middle by myself in a movie theater, seeing it for the first time. And he projected it up, and I watched the entire movie by myself. And it just hit me like a ton of the bricks, like halfway through the movie. I was like, oh my God, what have I done? I am just totally bearing myself. And this is now going to go into the world. And we're going to be at South by Southwest next week. And I had this, I truly is, maybe that sounds naive, but I hadn't really sort of thought about it because I was in the middle of making it. And I had this huge breakdown on the way home. I was just like, oh my God, I can't do this. I need to bury the movie. I can't put it out there. And then I came home and obviously I have an amazing, wonderful, supportive partner who sort of talked me off the ledge and reminded me why I was doing this, and reminded me how I was trying to, spread the gospel about what this looks like and have other people be able to see themselves in this movie, and, convinced me to continue to be brave and put it out there. So yeah, that was when it really hit me. And then after that, it was sort of like, okay. And then my family saw the movie, and then at the premiere, and once they saw the movie, I've been okay since. I'm like, all right, once my family saw it and signed off on the whole thing, because obviously it's an intimate betrayal of a lot of
Oh,
things.
of course. Yeah,
So
it's a family affair. It's not just like you, the person with OCD. It's also
yeah,
whoever's in your
exactly.
system and how they get sucked into the whole process without
Yeah. So once
really
that personal
understanding.
layer, yeah, exactly. Once that personal layer was peeled back, I've been able to now just focus on my advocacy, and honestly, it's amazing. I didn't realize how much this would engage me with my advocacy, because at least me, I don't know other people's experience with OCD, but it's sort of isolated. Obviously, you're incredibly isolated in your own experience. I was fortunate enough to have a really smart therapist who realized that I was late onset, and so it would probably be or it would be better for me personally to be in group therapy settings so that I could be around some other people who've been managing this for a long time. And I was able to sort of see that it wasn't this death sentence that I had it sort of built up in my head to be, that I could see these amazing, flourishing people and groups and stuff. So I was very lucky to have that. And I think that, now that I'm able to be an advocate and I have something that's able to help me engage with that, it's been a truly wonderful experience. I've met so many amazing humans within this community, like yourself, um, and it's been amazing. So I've been happy that I could be a part of this and get the word out about OCD. I think it's having a moment. I've been seeing just this last couple weeks. Luke Combs, I know, the singer, is
Hmm.
struggles from it, and now he's been incredibly vocal, and he's been doing a ton of interviews, and people like George Ezra over in the UK, and
Hmm.
at least just in my news cycles and sources, I've been seeing a lot more about it in a way that when I was making this film and it was coming out, I didn't see anything about it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I hope that, I hope OCD is having a moment where it's coming a little bit more to the mainstream and people are understanding it, and that my film here can be a small part of that. And that other filmmakers can come on and join me and try to use this to tell more stories.
Oh, a
I would love
1000%.
that.
I mean, I
Yeah,
agree. I think it's still in its I hope it's having a moment for sure, but I also just from statistics know it's still so misunderstood. So, I mean,
yeah,
I think it's pretty awesome to have a visual representation, like you said, not just to focus on here's what it sounds like in the mind, but this
yeah,
is really like just the whole how everything organically really does actually look in reality because
yeah.
it does look very different from the outside than obviously if when you're the one dealing with it on the inside.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah, and I think that having mainstream media representation is incredibly important. We all watch films for different ways, and we have popcorn movies, and we have, I think that escapism and entertainment play an important role in our lives. But there's also a lot of space for films like ours that can hopefully be entertaining, but can also maybe leave you with a bit of an understanding about something you didn't understand or pose questions. Or I think there's a space for both of those things.
100%. And like you said, that the kind of incredible to hear that, you also have family members and other folks who are able to really engage visually because to your
Yeah,
point, I think and what I've seen time and time again, and I often say is like, look, when we're in the throes of something that like we're not typically going to sit and read a manual.
yeah,
You want kind of more immediate relief or you want something that you can relate to
yep,
that can give you some insight or clue or something. And so, a lot of times it could be a film, whether it's a YouTube short or a reel or a post or something, because as a
yeah,
human being, we're not oriented in moments of, intense pressure and struggle to sit there and have this high level functioning thought process. So,
hmm,
right. I think having something that you can actually just watch and watch in a where it speaks obviously to everybody, right? Like the whole system, the whole unit
yeah,
understands what's going on here and can translate and infer things and then open up that dialogue and normalize it. I mean, that's really, I think, such a huge piece of it too, because so many of these
mm,
things are not often discussed and also depends on where you are in the world. Some of these things are
yeah,
still extremely stigmatized
yeah.
and make it really hard to find, anything that can be relevant or relatable.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that especially I think that's why I made a conscious choice in the film within the narrative structure to also to to really show this one person who's going through it, but to really spend the time to develop out sort of other relationships, to spend time with his girlfriend, to spend times with like his in-laws, to spend time in the groups with his therapist, and to sort of see it from all these different angles within the system, like you just spoke to. Especially with a film that's about an invisible illness. I just think that when there's physical disabilities, it's a more clear visualization. It's just really hard, I think, with people that suffer through invisible illnesses to find that community, to see that representation. And so I hope this film
Yeah.
can be a part of that. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. And like you said, especially when you're dealing with something, if you can't really see it, right? You oftentimes also feel very isolated. And I think that's just a really, really big issue
Yeah.
in general, right? I mean, you can feel isolated for different reasons, but then you add OCD on top of it. And then if people don't understand and right, like,
Hmm.
oh, just get over it or stop thinking about it. And it's like, if I could do that, I would.
Yeah.
Right. So
I think especially with an illness like OCD that attacks the things that we love most, and I think OCD tends to attack our loved ones because when we're compulsing and we're looking for reassurance, and we're kind of getting into these things that we do that our brain takes over. Uh, I think that it tends to sort of, if you don't have people that are very close to you, friends and family that understand what you're going through, it's very easy to start sort of chipping away and eroding that
yeah,
relationship.
yeah.
And I know that OCD has probably taken a lot from a lot of people in terms of that. So I do think that the educational component with friends and family is equal to the sufferer's understanding, because it's very important that because we go to the ones that we love when we compulse because we feel safe and we feel secure and we're seeking that reassurance. And so there needs to be a dialogue between the sufferer and those people of setting boundaries and understanding as much as possible, as much as they can, what they can do to help you by not feeding into this reassurance and not doing those things. So um, I'm very lucky that I have incredible people around me that have taken the time. But again, I think that seeing a film is just different than reading a textbook. So I hope that there can be more because it wasn't just my film coming out too. There was a few that came out
Mhm.
as well, like and right after mine, there was a few kind of OCD films that were coming out, like
Yeah.
Turtles All the Way Down kind of came out
Yes.
right after mine, and that kind of gave a real mainstream thing. And yeah, I just think that not that it's having a moment. Hopefully, this moment can take hold and it can be more normalized
Yes.
in a general sense. And that's the main goal, I think, for anybody who's out advocating for OCD is to just sort of put it on an even playing field when you have as much of the world population. What is it? You probably know better than I. It's like 5 to 8% of the world's population suffers
Something
from
like
this.
that, yeah.
You know, it's just a that's a massive number. It's a lot of people suffering and suffering in silence and suffering without really mainstream representation. So, I,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly, and then seeing shows like Monk or like Big Bang Theory or,
yeah,
or seeing it as a quirky or not even understanding so many other themes or ways that it can manifest, right?
yeah,
Right, like Puro, like that's a lot of it is in your head,
hmm
right? Or like, I don't know, like perfectionism based OCD is very different than, if you
hmm
just, I don't know, just like things a certain way. Like those things are not the same thing.
sure.
Yeah, yeah. I really appreciate your time. So if guests or listeners want to watch the movie, where can they watch it? And if they want to reach out to you or get in touch with you, how can they?
Sure. Where is it? Right, I know it's on Tubi right now. It's streaming on
Mhm.
Tubi, and then it's also for rent wherever anybody rents movies, whether if it's Prime or Apple or whatever people's platforms are. It's renting for a nominal fee, and it's streaming
Mhm.
on Tubi, and then it'll probably be in other places as the months roll on and the years. But and if they want to get in touch, we have an Instagram page that's sort of the home base for the film now. That's pure_o_ movie, I believe. And people can reach out there, and somebody will find it, I'm sure, and we can stay in touch. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. And of course, I'll include all of that in the show notes.
Oh, lovely, lovely. Yeah. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for having me on.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely, and thank you for everything that you're doing with your advocacy.
Oh, thanks.
All right, Christina.
Bye.
Bye.